So now we're going to talk about kind of what exactly each section of the nephron does to make urine. So through filtration and looking through kind of picking through what the blood has in the plasma, 180 liters of plasma is processed daily, but you only make about a liter and a half of urine each day. And this is kind of on average, it's a variation. So the kidneys actually look through the plasma about 60 times each day. So there's a lot of times that it's looking through, picking out um, things that it still wants, or then things that we need to get rid of based on what's needed inside the body. And that's why we have a large amount of cardiac output that's going towards the kidneys. Since the kidneys are working so much and filtering and secreting, they actually use about 20 to 25% of the oxygen at rest. So this isn't just movement, it's just when you're resting. About quarter of your oxygen is actually used by the kidneys because there's a lot of active transport going there. That means ATP, that means oxygen. Filtrate again is the beginning part. So we start with filtrate from glomerulus filtration. So again, plasma minus the proteins. So all the cells, the blood cells, the plasma proteins, all of those things are still going to stay in the glomerulus. So it is similar to what's happening in regular capillaries. It's just a little bit leakier that we have more movement of things in the glomerulus. So then once filtrate goes through all the tubular system, then we're looking at urine. And urine is actually very different from what we start with. So it's very different from the filtrate. Filtrate starts, and then, like I said, we reabsorb a lot of things and secrete more things. So we kind of change the composition, the kidneys do, as much as possible to make sure that we have a balance inside the body and what we're getting rid of. So urine is going to be metabolic waste and in anything that's not needed. So things that we don't need to maintain our balance and our homeostasis inside our body. So again, urine production, homeostasis. So we're going to regulate our volume. So the amount of water is going to be a major reason why we change volume again. So either keeping water or getting rid of water is going to change the blood volume that we have. So homeostasis of blood volume. And looking at the composition of blood. Again, if there's excess of things like waste products or certain electrolytes that we need to get rid of, then the kidneys will be able to get rid of them and secrete them. And if they are needed, still maintained, then we can change it and keep more of them than we normally would too. So it goes both ways. Kidneys, depending, can make very concentrated urine, meaning there's not a lot of water. So this is not a lot of water, and it's all the other stuff, all the solutes and everything. And it can be 4 times more concentrated than blood plasma. So we can really take the water out of it and make sure that it's just the solutes and we're not losing water. Again, this depends on what's going on in your body. So homeostasis, if you're dehydrated or haven't drank a lot of water, then we're going to want to make more concentrated urine because we don't want to urinate water that we need inside our body. And opposite is true if we've been drinking a lot of water, then we can get rid of some. So you're going to have less concentrated urine. It all depends on what's happening inside and what we need to maintain that balance and maintain that stable internal environment, which is the homeostasis. So if we're looking at excretion, so that is getting rid of it. So that is peeing it out. So urination here is how we excrete things, get rid of them from the body. The major kind of waste products that we see in urine, first is urea, and that's the most um, abundant or highest amount of organic waste. When we break down amino acids in the liver, that is where urea is produced. So that's what we need to get rid of. We can't use urea or recycle it, so we are going to get rid of it in urine. Creatinine is going to be in skeletal muscle. So if we're breaking down creatine phosphate, remember, kind of energy molecule. So we can use this for contraction to make kind of convert to ATP, use it for energy. So sometimes, well, when we're doing that, we're breaking down and causing creatinine. So that is another waste product that we'll get rid of. And uric acid is going to be another one. So urea, uric acid is going to be nitrogenous bases of RNA. So remember, RNA molecules, we have messenger RNA that's always used to pretty much kind of read our DNA and use it as kind of write it down so we can make proteins. So RNA is part of making proteins at the ribosome level. So we're always making and breaking down RNA molecules to read our DNA molecules and bring the message out to the ribosomes, or the rough ER in the cell cytoplasm. So we're always kind of using nitrogenous waste. We're going to recycle them, but there's a uric acid waste product that comes from that. So this is just looking, you don't need to memorize the numbers or look at that. It's just kind of comparison of looking at what's in plasma, so what's in your blood, and what's in urine. So if you look at it, there's a high variability of sodium, and that in urine, and that depends on how much consumption and absorption you're getting from your digestive system or anything else. But we keep it at kind of a narrow range in our plasma. So if it's too high, then it's going to be a higher number in the urine because we're going to get rid of it. If it's too low, there's going to be a lower number in the urine because we're going to want to keep it. Same with potassium. So you can see a wide range, but not so much in the plasma. Chloride, same thing. Same thing. Bicarbonate, oftentimes, we kind of maintain it. We can use bicarbonate, and it's kind of a narrow range, but in urine, it's pretty kind of constant in what we excrete out. Glucose, lipids, amino acids, proteins. So these are the major nutrients. So we always said we're going to reabsorb and keep our nutrients. We don't want to get rid of them because we can use them inside our body. So we have our ranges for glucose, lipids, amino acids, and proteins, but look at them in urine. Minuscule, minuscule, still pretty tiny, nothing. So this is going to be where if it does go into the filtrate, we're going to reabsorb them because we want to keep them in our body and we want to use them. So we can use them inside our cells. So it's not always just circulating. We can push things into our cell. Remember insulin pushing glucose into the cell. So we can use it. Then the opposite true is the nitrogenous waste. So waste with kind of chemical reactions where we can't use these products. So look at them in plasma. Yeah, kind of a little bit of waste products going on in plasma, a small amount, but there's a larger amount going on in urine because these are things that we're going to want to excrete or get rid of or urinate out. So it's just showing you the comparison between values in plasma and urine here. So looking at the kidney, there's 3 processes that we're going to do to make urine. And again, this is going to be all occurring in the nephron because that's where urine is forming, and how we need to adjust what's going on in our blood. First, again, like I said, the glomerulus is just for filtration. That's where filtration is occurring. So it's still going to be the same where you're going to keep all your blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, all of those things are going to stay in your glomerulus and keep going. And any of your plasma proteins are also going to stay. So again, they're not sinusoids. Proteins can't move. So you're going to have everything else in the plasma and the blood besides those things. So never protein, never cells. So it's going to be, if you looked at urine under the microscope or looked at protein levels of urine, it's going to be not there. So you're not going to see cells in a normal urine sample, and you're not going to see protein levels in a normal urine sample. Tubular reabsorption, again, we looked at it, less than 1% of the filtrate is urine. So 99% of it is going to be pushed out and then reclaimed. So we're going to take a lot of stuff back. So this just gives us an idea. So you can think of it, you have all of a sudden a unlabeled box in your garage, and and you're going through a cleaning frenzy. All of a sudden, it's just easier to dump out the entire box, glomerular filtration, and either take what you need out of it, so what you want to keep, and then put back in the box what you want to get rid of. So think of it that way. So you can just filter through. And most of what's in your box, you're going to keep. So you're going to put in a separate pile to make sure that you're keeping it. And that's what's happening with tubular reabsorption, is you dumped out your box, but you're keeping most of it. So you've gone through it, you've looked through, you've decided you're keeping all of the stuff that you want, or most of it. So that's happening in the renal tubules and also in the collecting ducts to some extent. Tubular secretion, again, is the stuff you want to get rid of. So you're putting it back in the box to throw it away. So that's why you're going through the box, to make sure that's only things that you want to throw away and not things that you actually want to keep. So you're going to move substances from the blood to the filtrate, so that in the renal tubules and the collecting ducts, so that you can get rid of it. So again, filtration only happening in the glomerulus. So that's going to be pushing out from the plasma into the glomerular capsule and going into proximal convoluted tubule. Water reabsorption is going to occur in specific ways, areas. The proximal convoluted tubule, a lot of water is reabsorbed here. Again, all the nutrients. Then we're going to look specifically at the nephron loop. Water reabsorption only occurs in the descending limb of the nephron loop. The ascending limb is going to be only solutes, and we'll look at why later when we specifically look at the nephron loop. The distal convoluted tubule is going to have still reabsorption if needed, and then it's also going to have secretion if needed as well. So it's kind of both happening there. So again, looking at the renal corpuscle, filtration is the name of the game. So this is going to be everything but plasma proteins and blood cells. So water, inorganic and organic solutes, pretty much everything else but plasma proteins and blood cells. In the proximal convoluted tubule, 60 to 70% of water is reabsorbed. That's a majority of the water, more than half, is going to be reabsorbed. 99 to 100% of the organic substrates. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about glucose, lipids, amino acids, any of those kind of nutrients that we looked at that chart previously are going to be reabsorbed here. You're also going to have a majority reabsorption of sodium and chloride ions in the filtrate. So, and we have different ways, active. So I told you a lot of times we do use a lot of ATP. So monosaccharides, amino acids, vitamins, ions, all sorts of stuff are going to be reabsorbed. And that's going to use energy. We also have passive reabsorption. We may reabsorb some urea to help with kind of gradients in specific areas, but we'll secrete it too. Chloride ions, lipid soluble materials can just go through the plasma membrane. Water is another one. We will secrete hydrogen ions if we need to. So pH balance is going to be hydrogen ions, ammonium ions. That's a waste product. Creatinine, waste product. Any drugs and toxins are going to be getting rid of at the proximal convoluted tubule. Nephron loop is going to be water and sodium chloride. So sodium and chloride is going to be the only things that are going to be reabsorbed in the nephron loop. So the rest of the water, again, most of it is in the proximal convoluted tubule. We get to the nephron loop, another quarter of the water is going to be reabsorbed, but also quarter of the sodium and chloride ions that are going to be there are going to be used because we use the sodium and we use the chloride as an osmotic gradient to help us reabsorb more water. So again, we'll look at that more specifically when we get to the nephron loop. The distal convoluted tubule, it's a variable amount of water. So everywhere else, it's kind of a fixed way, and we'll talk about water reabsorption later. Water reabsorption in the distal convoluted tubule is variable because of our friend antidiuretic hormone. So antidiuretic hormone can be around and it's going to change the amount of water that's reabsorbed in the distal convoluted tubule. Again, we'll look at that a little later when we get to the distal convoluted tubule. We can also have a variable amount of sodium ions because of the hormone aldosterone. That's going to change our reabsorption of sodium in that area as well. So we have a lot of variability in the reabsorption in the distal convoluted tubule because it's controlled by hormones. So the hormone control is going to be in this area, also the collecting duct. Secretion, hydrogen ions, ammonium ions, creatinine, drugs, and toxins. Again, collecting system or the collecting duct also has a variable amount of water reabsorbed because of hormones. So it's the same thing that we saw in the distal convoluted tubule of the variability of sodium ions and water based on ADH and aldosterone. So again, we'll talk about that more later, but there's a variable amount of reabsorption depending on what the collecting duct is being told. And it's also same variable amount of potassium and hydrogen ions because of kind of flipping switches saying, okay, we need to secrete these or we need to reabsorb, again, based on what's going on in the body and what the body needs. The peritubular capillaries are going to absorb anything that's being reabsorbed. So if it's taken back inside the body by the kidneys, the peritubular capillaries are going to pick it up and return it to circulation. So this is just where the return system is. And vasa recta is the same thing. Anything that's being reabsorbed by the nephron loop is going to be returned to general circulation.